everyone, and welcome to another recording of All Things M365 Compliance. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nikki Chapel. I'm a Principal Cloud Architect at Cloudway and a Microsoft MVP. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan.
Hey, Nikki. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Ryan John Murphy. I am a compliance SE, we're now called within Microsoft. I'm a data security champion, eDiscovery advocate, and a former MVP. Thanks for joining us again. Nikki, you got a really good topic for today, actually, haven't we?
Yes, this is a topic that people may not be aware of or might have missed, but it's a super important topic. There is going to be a strategic change of how data is stored in private channels. And this is going to impact all kind of data governance, retention compliance aspects in Microsoft Purview. Now, the announcement has been announced under the Microsoft Teams blog because it impacts Teams. They're changing how private channel works. But us as kind of compliance advocates, it impacts us because we're the ones that govern the data. We're the ones that are putting data security and compliance controls on it. So we also need to understand what the impact is to us. And super importantly, they're going to start making changes on the 20th of September. So you need to act now and check what the impact is for you. So what we're going to start off with, what private channels are and how they work now. So in Microsoft Teams, you can have a standard channel, shared channels, and private channels. So Microsoft Team is a type of Microsoft 365 group. So what you get is a group mailbox and you have a SharePoint site. So with a standard channel conversation, it's stored in the group mailbox and the files are stored in the SharePoint site. When it comes to private channels, because you have a subset of the members of the team, what they're doing or historically have been doing is stored all those channel conversations in the user's mailbox because they couldn't store it in the group mailbox because potentially people could have access to it that they shouldn't have. And they created a secondary SharePoint site. So that's historically how it's been working. It's always been a real pain, particularly I would say for eDiscovery and trying to make sure that we've got the right assets in scope. Now, the strategic shift is Microsoft are going to start storing private channel conversations in the group mailbox, following on from sometime after the 20th of September. So where it really hits us as kind of purview specialists is in those areas where we've got governance on those channels. So primarily eDiscovery, DLP and retention. So we're going to go through really and talk about what we need to do in each one of those areas.
Amazing.
Let's start off with eDiscovery. What we can do is just talk about how that works at the moment. So when we're in eDiscovery, Ryan, what would we normally do when we do a search, say, for eDiscovery? How would we look for private channel communications?
Well, hopefully everybody's using the new world now, the new UI UX, which is a lot easier to determine whether or not a particular channel has a private channel within it. Gone are the days, I would hope, where people are having to do additional searches to understand that team's channel if it does have that subcategory of a private channel, which is often missed. I will say, which is often missed. This new world that we have now, it's there for you. You get the main channel and then you get the private channel directly underneath it. Now, more often than not, that private channel has been built for a specific reason. So it's a channel, like kind of like, it's like the channel within a channel, if you like, Nikki, just to give the emphasis of what that's a good word to use. When targeting that group mailbox, there's obviously something specific in there that you need to retain, preserve, or discover. All right. Now, I even think today, even with just the normal structure of what it entails now, where those private chats are going into the user mailbox, okay, the group mailbox is often missed off in an eDiscovery perspective. All right. But simply connecting, not connecting, discovering or bringing it into your data source case, it's a lot easier now to visualize because you've got that drop down option, and it's literally a drop down and a step to the side. So you can really see that private channel is within that SharePoint site. Hopefully that answers that question.
If I just share my screen here, So what we've got here is an example of an eDiscovery search here. So if I make this a little bit bigger. So as we can see here, this team here is called the internal team. Each team has the group mailbox, and that's where the conversations were stored. And you can see it has 2 SharePoint sites. And that's because you've got the standard SharePoint site and you've got the secondary private channel there. So for private channel conversations, you would have had to have gone away and found who the end users were and picked them as sources as well. So going forward, you won't have to do that. But as Ryan said, sometimes people think, oh, SharePoint is just files and they like untick this. Maybe they have the perception that all of the conversations were stored in the user's mailbox. So, you can untick them and just say for the site. So I think really what you need to do from an e-discovery side is you need to go back, if I cancel out of here, go back and look at all your cases that you've got in your organization and double check, go through the ones that are active, not the ones that are closed, and have a look just to make sure there's not going to be any unexpected consequences. Because once this migration happens, if you had a particular mailbox on hold because you were looking at those private channels, and for example, you had Sally's mailbox on hold because there were some private channels and you wanted that stuff retained. When the data gets moved from Sally's mailbox into the group mailbox, then actually you're still holding Sally's mailbox under the hold in eDiscovery, but there's no data there. It's going to be moved to the respective team, and that team may not have an equivalent hold. So there is a risk of data loss. So it's super important that you kind of go through all of those elements really and just check that you're not going to unhold data.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a great idea for Microsoft to do that. I think, Nikki, because you've got everything then in a single. I want to say a single container rather than a single repository, because obviously you've got the files in the private channel, and then you've got the chats in the actual group channel. But like Nikki's saying there, if you've got users on hold today and there is interest in a private channel, that private channel has become part of your discovery. That data from the user's mailbox is going to be hydrated straight into that group mailbox. So you're going to be holding a mailbox that doesn't really contain anything that's relevant to the case. That data is now inside of that group mailbox. The amount of times that I see that missing mailbox because everybody just seems to think every particular conversation that goes on is in that user's mailbox. A bit of a mind shift, I think, Nick, is the right word to put it, to ensure that that mailbox, wherever there's a private channel, that is now discovered and placed on hold, or is a part of your discovery cases moving forward. I actually have, and I think you have a good blog, Nikki, on where you're, understanding your data landscape when it comes to e-discovery. I assume you're going to update that.
Yes. The second area to look at really is retention policies. I think this is super because one of the reasons or the issues that we always used to have is I want to have a policy that retains all of our data in our Microsoft Teams for X amount of time. And you want to say, I want to cover all my Microsoft Teams. But then that all of the private channel conversations were stored somewhere else. So we had to then apply a policy to the end users. Or vice versa, we might have had a policy on the end users, but we don't want a policy on the team. But hold on a minute, some of the team information is in the end user. So there was never that clear split. There was always this overlap. So what will happen going forward is you need to, again, look at all your policies. So if I just share my screen.
And we will, while Nikki's just getting that, we will put the actual blog that we're referring to, the roadmap items, so on and so forth, in the actual bio of the YouTube channel.
So when we're looking at kind of your policies, retention has always been quite complicated because you can't necessarily put all the locations together. So you ended up having to create, I think, 4 or 5 different groupings of the policies. So when it came down to Microsoft Teams, this is looking at static policies. We had this one here, Microsoft 365 group mailboxes and sites was where your data from your channel conversations or your standard and shared channel conversations, and your files were under this one here. But for your private channel ones, there was always this one here, Teams private channel messages. And a lot of people forgot to tick this because they thought it was above. And really importantly, if we wanted to scope something just to Teams, we've got the group mailboxes there. And then if we wanted to have private channel messages, you couldn't have them together. They were always mutually exclusive. So what's going to happen going forward is any retention policies targeting Teams private channel messages, you will still see them there and you can go and delete them, but you're no longer going to be able to edit them. So what you need to do is you need to look through any of your existing retention policies that were targeting private channel messages and say, have I got something equivalent for your Microsoft 365 groups one? Now, hopefully they would align anyway, because this is the policy we want across all of our teams, and you had to have two policies, the group one and the Teams channel one. But again, do your due diligence, go and have a look and make sure that any rules that you've got that were applying to private channel messages were reflected up here in the group. So say you're not going to be able to edit these policies anymore, not for the private channels. You will be able to delete them. But the key thing is Microsoft is saying, make sure those policies are in place by the 20th of September. Because if they start migrating your data and you haven't got an equivalent policy targeting the groups and sites, which might be all locations or it might be a subset, again, you're at risk of data being lost. And super important with the team's communications are when the retention policy hits in, if you've got a delete action, that is irrecoverable. So if it starts deleting, then there is no way to get it back unless you've got your own third party backup. So that's another thing to do. So that's point 2 on this. By the 20th of September, go and review all your retention policies.
And just when you mention a third party thing there as well, Nikki, just going back to the eDiscovery piece, I have a lot of customers that use automation to create cases and create holds. There's third party applications that link into Microsoft that create holds, communications, and so on and so forth. So just another thought for everybody, that if you're in an organization or your customer has some type of automation or Graph API connectivity into eDiscovery, make sure you're covering off that new area as well where the group mailbox is, and removing any private Teams communications from the user, specifically if you're using third-party tools to do the hold and the communications.
And then there's a third area that impacts this. So this is now on the data security controls. We need to think about DLP policies as well. So DLP policies are again location based. You can say, I want a DLP policies that's impacting Teams or it's impacting emails, etc. You would need to go and double check those policies there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually show you the blog. It's on the Microsoft Teams blog. There isn't an equivalent on the Purview blog. So I think people may well miss this. So it goes through the information here. It talks about the private channels, as we were saying. It's a subset of the membership. Historically, that data wasn't stored within the group mailbox. It was in the user's mailbox. Some top tip, other things here means you're going to be able to get more private channels in here. So that was the limitation. We've got more limitation. We're going to be able to schedule meetings. And, it says the simplified compliance. It will be simplified in the future, but we need to make sure while this transition period, there are no holes. And that's kind of down to us as the users. So this is going through what we've talked about. So we're talking about the Purview holds and eDiscovery. So we've talked about that one there. So this is the information. And this is the second one here. I've just did them in the different order. The third one is the retention policies. So here we're talking about, again, go through and review any policies to make sure that they, again, are scoped correctly. So we're talking about group mailbox as opposed to a user mailbox here as well.
Yeah, perfect. Again, really good forward thinking, I think, from Microsoft here, Nikki. dare I say, a little bit overdue, given the fact that, those communications are really pinpointed. We have spoken about this before, where communications end up from a repository perspective. I think this blog, partnered with your new blog on those new data locations, definitely going to give people a forward thinking vision of, okay, do I understand my data landscape today when it comes to M365? And I think just that in itself, Nikki, accompanied with your blog is, even today, Microsoft creates so many different modalities and applications for people to use. It's very hard for people to actually keep up in the background. I mean, we only, just the other day, I saw a releasement of encryption for OneNote now, just to ensure we can have that fully fledged outcasting view from or without what Copilot's vision. So we change things all the time. Keeping up to date with this podcast, keeping up to date with your blog is definitely going to give people the ability to understand their data landscape, and B, ensure they've got the right compliance policies in place to retain, prevent, hold, and discover.
Yep. And the other thing for people to look at is, always keep on top of the message center as well. Not we've got
Yes.
the blogs, so don't just focus on the Purview blogs, and don't just focus on the Purview services in the message center. They've tagged it under Teams. They haven't also tagged it under Purview, because the business implications are, you've got to go and do some remedial work in the Purview Admin Center. The technical changes are in Teams. So again, here we can see this is the message center here. We can see the services just Teams. We can have, they could, if they wanted to, have had multiple services. So if you're going in there and you just filter in the services to think, I'm only interested in Purview, I'm not interested in anything else, there is a risk that you could miss things.
Yeah. I'm going to take that as feedback. I think Nikki, I think, specifically the Microsoft teams here, with the Purview GTM team, marketing team, I definitely think they should be mapped into the Purview element. My fear is specifically around eDiscovery and the importance of preserving and discovering that data and retaining it, because if data is not retained, it's not discoverable. And then you've got the prevention piece within DLP as well.
In a longer term, I think it's going to be better, but in the next few months, the key thing is that we need to act before the 20th of September, just to make sure there's no unexpected consequences.
Absolutely, I completely agree with everything you said. That maybe, Nikki, we can just refresh everybody's mind in a couple of weeks' time as well. As we're encroaching onto that date, just to say, hey, everybody, don't forget, we've got this pod and we've got this information for you to ensure that you're still compliant, still discoverable, still retaining, still preventing, everything you need to do when it comes to group mailbox and conversations within a private touch.
So, thank you everyone for joining us again. Hope you found this interesting. And if this is the first time you've just joined, don't forget to subscribe. We've got lots of other exciting videos around Microsoft Purview landscape.
Indeed. We've also got a few people from Product Group lined up to come on as well. So we absolutely would love your support. Subscribe and like. It really does help us out in the background. We can see that a majority of people don't subscribe. But if you've learned anything from this content, or you can recommend this content to somebody else for them to learn from it, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you all next time. Goodbye.
See you next time. Bye bye.